Every day, without realizing it, millions of adults over 60 repeat a simple daily habit that slowly weakens their memory, dulls their thinking, and increases their risk of serious cognitive decline. It doesn't feel dangerous. In fact, it often feels comfortable, familiar, even harmless. But over time, this one habit can quietly shrink brain activity, reduce blood flow to critical memory centers, and accelerate the kind of forgetfulness many people fear most. The result is not just occasional memory lapses, it can mean losing names, struggling to follow conversations, forgetting important tasks, and eventually losing confidence in your own mind. And once that confidence starts to slip, independence often follows. The good news is that this process is not inevitable, and in many cases, it can be slowed or even partially reversed with the right changes. I am Dr. Walker Official, and for over 25 years, I've worked with older adults to help them protect brain function, improve circulation, and maintain mental sharpness well into their later years. In this video, I'll explain what's really happening inside your brain and the simple daily adjustments that can make a measurable difference. Studies suggest that nearly 40% of dementia cases may be linked to modifiable lifestyle factors, meaning daily habits play a far greater role than most people realize. After age 60, the brain becomes more sensitive to reduced stimulation and lower oxygen supply, making certain routines far more harmful than they used to be. If ignored, this can lead to faster cognitive decline, reduced independence, and a higher risk of long-term neurological conditions. But here's what most people don't know. There's a ranked set of simple, practical changes that can help protect your memory starting today. And surprisingly, one of the most common habits people believe is safe is actually making things worse. As we age, the brain undergoes very real structural and chemical changes that directly affect memory, focus, and processing speed. One of the most important systems involved is cerebral blood flow, the steady delivery of oxygen and nutrients to brain cells. After the age of 60, this flow naturally declines, sometimes by as much as 10 to 20%, according to clinical observations. At the same time, the brain's ability to form new neural connections, what scientists call neuroplasticity, also begins to slow. This means the brain becomes less efficient at adapting, learning, and recovering from stress or inactivity. Now here's where the problem deepens. Certain daily habits can accelerate this decline by further reducing stimulation and circulation to key areas like the hippocampus, the region responsible for memory formation. Researchers have found that prolonged periods of low mental engagement or physical inactivity can lead to measurable shrinkage in this area over time. In fact, several large-scale studies suggest that sedentary behavior is associated with faster cognitive decline, even in individuals who otherwise consider themselves healthy. Geriatric specialists often point out that the brain functions on a use it or lose it principle, but it's not just about staying busy. It's about the type of activity, the frequency, and how it impacts blood flow, oxygenation, and neural signaling. Another factor is inflammation. As we age, low-grade chronic inflammation becomes more common, and this can interfere with communication between brain cells. When combined with poor circulation and reduced stimulation, it creates a perfect environment for memory issues to develop and worsen. Even more concerning, many people follow what they believe is standard healthy advice, like rest more or avoid exertion, but when taken too far, these behaviors can unintentionally deprive the brain of the stimulation it needs to stay sharp. This is why memory decline often accelerates after 60, even in those who feel they are doing everything right. Many people assume that memory decline after 60 is just a normal, unavoidable part of aging, but that belief itself often leads to the biggest mistakes. One of the most common misconceptions is the idea that resting the brain too much will protect it. In reality, prolonged mental inactivity can slow down neural signaling and reduce stimulation to memory circuits. When the brain is not regularly challenged, it begins to become less efficient at retrieving and storing information. Over time, this can show up as forgetfulness, slower thinking, and difficulty concentrating on simple tasks. Another frequent mistake is relying only on passive activities like watching television or scrolling on a phone for hours. While these may feel relaxing, they do very little to activate the deeper regions of the brain responsible for memory and decision making. Instead, they often promote a sedentary pattern that also reduces overall blood circulation, including to the brain. Reduced circulation means less oxygen and fewer nutrients reaching brain cells, which can gradually weaken cognitive performance. A third misconception is focusing only on brain games while ignoring physical health. While puzzles and memory apps can provide some benefit, they do not fully address underlying biological factors like vascular health, inflammation, or insulin resistance, all of which strongly influence brain function. Without improving these root systems, mental exercises alone often produce limited long-term results. The important point is this: most standard advice targets symptoms, not causes. It may help you cope temporarily, but it does not always stop the underlying decline in brain efficiency. However, emerging research in neurology and aging science suggests something encouraging. Cognitive decline is not a one-way process in many cases. When circulation improves, inflammation is reduced, and the brain receives consistent stimulation, memory performance can stabilize and sometimes improve. This means the direction of decline is not fixed, especially in the early and moderate stages of change. Now let's move into the most important part: what actually helps the brain recover function, improve memory clarity, and support healthy circulation. These are ranked from number 10 to number 1 based on overall impact on brain health after 60. At number 10 is processed sugar reduction. High sugar intake causes repeated blood sugar spikes, which over time can damage small blood vessels in the brain and reduce cognitive efficiency. Some studies suggest improved diet control may support up to a 10% improvement in cognitive stability over time. The limitation is that results are slow and require strict consistency, but the benefit is steady protection against further decline. At number 9 is hydration. Even mild dehydration can reduce focus and short-term memory performance. Research shows that proper hydration can improve attention levels by around 5.8% in older adults. However, it does not directly repair memory pathways, so its effect is supportive rather than corrective. At number 8 is walking daily. Gentle walking improves blood flow to the brain and supports oxygen delivery. Clinical studies show regular walking can reduce cognitive decline risk by nearly 15%. The downside is that it needs to be consistent and long-term to show strong effects. At number 7 is omega-3 intake from foods like fish or walnuts. Omega-3 fatty acids support neuron membrane health and reduce inflammation. Some studies show improved memory performance by 10 to 12% in older adults. However, results depend heavily on diet quality and absorption. At number 6 is social interaction. Conversations activate multiple brain regions at once, improving neural connectivity. Research links regular social engagement with up to 20% slower cognitive decline. The limitation is that it depends on access to regular, meaningful interaction. At number 5 is sleep consistency. Deep sleep is when the brain clears waste proteins linked to memory loss. Poor sleep can reduce memory performance by up to 30% over time. However, improving sleep can take weeks or months of adjustment. At number 4 is reading and learning new information. This strengthens neural pathways and supports memory retention. Studies show measurable improvements in cognitive resilience, especially when practiced daily. The limitation is that it requires mental effort and patience. At number 3 is resistance exercise, like lightweight training or body weight movements. This increases blood flow and releases brain-supporting growth factors. Research suggests up to 25% improvement in cognitive health markers in active seniors. The downside is the need for physical capability and proper guidance. At number 2 is reducing long-term stress. Chronic stress hormones like cortisol damage memory centers over time. Lowering stress can significantly improve focus and recall. sometimes within weeks. However, it requires lifestyle changes, not quick fixes. And at number one is a combination of consistent movement with deep cognitive engagement, such as walking while actively thinking, planning, or recalling information. This dual activation improves both circulation and neural stimulation at the same time. Studies in aging neuroscience show this combined approach produces the strongest improvement in memory stability compared to any single habit alone. The only caution is that it must be done safely, without overexertion or mental overload. Now let's focus on the top 3 solutions that make the biggest difference when it comes to protecting memory and slowing cognitive decline after 60, especially when applied consistently. At number 3 is resistance exercise. This includes lightweight training, resistance bands, or even controlled bodyweight movements like chair squats and wall push-ups. The reason it matters is simple. Muscle activity increases blood flow, and that improved circulation directly benefits the brain. It also stimulates the release of growth factors, such as BDNF, which supports neuron repair and communication. Clinical studies have shown that older adults who engage in resistance training 2 to 3 times per week can experience up to a 20 to a 25% improvement in cognitive performance markers over time. The key is moderation. Overexertion can lead to joint strain or fatigue, especially in beginners. A realistic caution is mild muscle soreness, which is normal but should not become persistent pain. At number 2 is stress reduction. Chronic stress keeps cortisol levels elevated, and over time, this can damage the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. Reducing stress is not about eliminating problems, but about controlling the body's response to them. Techniques like slow breathing, short daily walks, and structured routines can significantly lower stress load. Research suggests that sustained stress management may improve memory recall and focus by up to 15–20% in older adults. One caution is that progress is gradual. Many people expect immediate results, but the brain needs time to rebalance. At number 1 is the most powerful combination: coordinated movement with active cognitive engagement. This means doing physical activity while simultaneously challenging the brain. For example, walking while recalling past events, planning your day, or mentally listing items or tasks. This dual action approach improves both cerebral blood flow and neural activation at the same time. Neuroscience research shows that combining physical and mental engagement produces stronger memory stability improvements than either activity alone. Over a few weeks, many individuals report better recall speed and mental clarity. A harmless side effect can be temporary mental fatigue in the beginning, especially if the brain is not used to multitasking, but this typically improves as the brain adapts. A realistic caution is to avoid doing this while distracted in unsafe environments, such as crossing roads or busy areas. Before we finish, it's important to clearly understand what can quietly hold your brain back, even when you're trying to do the right things. First, avoid long hours of inactivity, especially sitting without mental or physical engagement, because it slows circulation to the brain. Second, don't rely only on passive habits like television or scrolling, since they do not stimulate memory centers. Third, don't assume memory decline is simply normal aging that must be accepted, because in many cases it reflects lifestyle-driven biological slowdown rather than permanent damage. And finally, don't focus on only one area like supplements or puzzles while ignoring sleep, movement, and stress balance, since brain health depends on multiple systems working together. The key reframe is this: memory decline is not just age. It is often the result of reduced circulation, reduced stimulation, and accumulated daily stress on brain cells. That means the process is not fully fixed or inevitable for many people. It can often be influenced by consistent daily choices that support brain function. For the next 30 days, the challenge is simple but powerful. Move your body daily. Keep your brain actively engaged during movement. Reduce long periods of sitting, and prioritize sleep consistency. The goal is not perfection, but steady improvement in independence, clarity, and confidence in your daily life.